The train lurched forward just as the announcement echoed through the crowded station. And in that instant, Daniel Carter felt the familiar weight of exhaustion settle deep into his bones. His hands were cracked from years of labor, his jacket too thin for the winter air, and his heart heavier than the worn backpack at his feet. He had almost missed the train, almost missed another chance to get home before his son fell asleep, when fate placed him in the narrow aisle of a packed carriage, standing with nowhere to sit, holding onto a metal pole as the doors slammed shut behind him. Life had taught Daniel not to expect comfort. It had taught him to survive. Before we go further, take a moment right now. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in the idea that even the smallest good deed can change a life, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. Daniel was a single father of 7-year-old Ethan, a bright boy with curious eyes and a laugh that could cut through the darkest days. Ever since Ethan's mother passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, Daniel had been both parents at once, working construction during the day, stocking shelves at night, and still finding the strength to help with homework and pack lunches before dawn. Sleep was a luxury he could not afford. Neither was bitterness, even though life had given him plenty of reasons for it. That evening, the train was more crowded than usual. People were packed shoulder to shoulder, faces buried in phones, eyes glazed with fatigue. Daniel shifted his weight, his knees aching from a 14-hour shift, when he noticed a woman a few steps away. She was pregnant, visibly so, one hand gripping the pole, the other resting protectively on her belly. Her face was pale, strained, as if she were fighting dizziness. Daniel didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, tapped her lightly on the arm, and gestured to the seat he had managed to claim moments earlier when someone rushed out at the last second. It was the only seat within reach, and he had been grateful for it. But gratitude had never outweighed compassion in his heart. He stood, offering it to her with a tired but genuine smile, then moved aside so she could sit. The woman looked at him with surprise, then relief flooding her features. She thanked him softly, settling into the seat as the train rattled onward. Daniel returned to standing, gripping the pole again, ignoring the sharp protest from his legs. What Daniel didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that someone had been watching. Across the carriage, seated in a corner with an unobstructed view, was Richard Hale, a man whose name rarely appeared without the word billionaire attached to it. He was the founder of a global technology empire, a self-made titan of industry whose companies employed tens of thousands. Yet despite his wealth, his tailored coat, and the quiet authority he carried, Richard felt profoundly empty that evening. He had buried his wife 2 years earlier. Cancer, fast and merciless. Since then, the world had lost its color, money had lost its meaning, meetings blurred together, awards felt hollow, and every luxury reminded him of the one thing he could not buy back: time. Richard had taken the train that day instead of his usual chauffeured car, seeking something he couldn't quite name. Maybe anonymity, maybe humanity, maybe proof that goodness still existed beyond boardrooms and balance sheets. When he saw Daniel give up his seat without a second thought, something shifted inside him. It wasn't the act itself, he had seen politeness before, but the way Daniel did it. No sigh, no show, no expectation of gratitude, just instinctive kindness from a man who clearly had very little left to give. The train jolted suddenly, and Daniel swayed, nearly losing his balance. He caught himself, embarrassed, and stared at the floor. The woman glanced back at him with concern, but Daniel only nodded, signaling he was fine. He wasn't fine, though. His feet burned, his back throbbed, and his mind raced with worries. Rent was due in 4 days. Ethan needed new shoes. The heating bill had arrived, higher than expected. Daniel had been turned down. for a promotion just that morning, the supervisor citing budget constraints, while hiring someone younger and cheaper. He wondered, not for the first time, how long he could keep going like this. At the next stop, a group of passengers exited, freeing a few seats. Daniel remained standing, lost in thought. Richard, however, stood up and approached him. There was nothing dramatic about the moment, no spotlight, no grand announcement, just one tired man walking toward another. Richard spoke calmly, asking Daniel if he would like to sit. Daniel declined politely, gesturing toward the pregnant woman. Richard smiled faintly and insisted, motioning to an empty seat nearby. Daniel finally accepted, nodding his thanks and lowering himself down with a quiet exhale. They sat in silence for a moment as the train hummed through the city. Then Richard asked a simple question about Daniel's day. That question opened a door Daniel rarely allowed anyone to see through. Without oversharing, he mentioned his son, his jobs, the long hours. There was no self-pity in his voice, just honesty. Richard listened, truly listened. He asked about Ethan's age, his interests. Daniel smiled for the first time that evening when he talked about his son's love for space and his dream of becoming an astronaut. That smile lingered longer than Daniel realized. By the time the train reached Daniel's stop, Richard had made a decision, one that would alter the course of Daniel's life in ways neither of them could yet imagine. As Daniel stood to leave, Richard handed him a simple business card. D. No title, no logo, just a name and a number. He told Daniel to call him if he ever needed help finding better work. Daniel nodded politely, slipping the card into his pocket without much thought. People made offers like that all the time, he told himself. Most of them faded into nothing. Daniel stepped off the train and walked the familiar route home, the city lights flickering against wet pavement. He picked up Ethan from the neighbor's apartment, listened to his excited chatter about a school project, and tucked him into bed that night with a story about stars and distant planets. As Ethan drifted off, Daniel sat at the edge of the bed, card heavy in his pocket, doubt heavy in his chest. He didn't call the next day, or the day after. Pride is a strange thing. It can keep a person standing even when they should sit, and silent when they should speak. 2 weeks later, Daniel's second job cut his hours. The next morning, his landlord left a notice under the door. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, Daniel finally pulled out the card. His hands shook as he dialed the number. Richard answered. The conversation was brief. Richard remembered him instantly. He asked Daniel to come in for a meeting the following day. Daniel almost laughed at the idea, him meeting a man like that, but desperation quieted his disbelief. The building Daniel entered the next morning was unlike anything he had known. Glass walls, open spaces, quiet confidence in every detail. He felt out of place in high-worn boots and faded jacket, but no one treated him that way. Richard met him personally. Over the next hour, Daniel shared more of his story, his skills, his willingness to learn, his refusal to quit. Richard saw not just a struggling single father, but a man of integrity, resilience, and quiet leadership, the kind of man companies desperately needed but often overlooked. Within days, Daniel was offered a position in facilities management within Richard's company. It paid more than both his jobs combined. It came with health insurance, stable hours, and room to grow. Daniel cried in his car after signing the papers, overwhelmed by relief he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. But Richard didn't stop there. Months later, after watching Daniel excel, after seeing how he treated coworkers with the same respect he had shown a stranger on a train, Richard set up a scholarship fund in Ethan's name. No publicity, no press, just opportunity. Life didn't magically become perfect. There were still hard days, still moments of fear, but the constant panic eased. Daniel could attend Ethan's school events. He could cook dinner instead of reheating leftovers at midnight. He could breathe. One evening, nearly a year after that train ride, Daniel and Ethan rode the same line home together. Ethan, now taller, now full of questions, asked his father why he always gave up his seat for others. Daniel smiled softly and told him that sometimes kindness comes back when you least expect it, not as a reward, but as a reminder that who you are matters. If this story is touching your heart right now, if it reminds you that compassion still has power in this world, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement keeps stories like this alive. As the train slowed, Daniel caught a glimpse of Richard seated across the carriage, older, quieter, but smiling as he watched Ethan animatedly explain something about rockets. Their eyes met. No words were exchanged. None were needed. Just before the end of this video, we have one special request for you. Please comment below with a single word that represents what this story made you feel. Hope, kindness, faith, gratitude, or something else entirely. Your words matter more than you know. Because sometimes a seat on a crowded train is more than a seat. Sometimes it's a turning point. And sometimes the smallest act of humanity can change a life forever.